Why do the strong houses in Game of Thrones, for example, Stark, Lannister, etc., have so few family members despite having been around for centuries? Think about history for a moment, the real-world kind. Dynasties rise and fall, families grow and scatter, and people have an uncanny habit of finding trouble, or in some cases, trouble finds them. Take the Starks and Lannisters as prime examples. They're not just large families, they're institutions, each with their own power bases, political machinations, and dragon-sized heaps of issues. And in those heaps of issues lies part of the answer: politics and power plays. For hundreds of years, the great houses of Westeros have been playing a lethal Game of Thrones. Their lineages are riddled with backstabbing, shady alliances, and the occasional wedding massacre. It's not exactly a stable environment for a large family tree to prosper. Given enough time, rivals emerge, internal and external conflicts arise, and branches get pruned, sometimes in a literal sense. In terms of survival, being a member of a great house is equivalent to painting a giant target on your back. Others are always plotting to trim the family tree. Think about it. The bigger the family, the more chances for power squabbles and for branches to be lopped off by rivals trying to consolidate their own power. War and rebellion. Wars aren't picky about whose blood gets spilled. The ruling families of Westeros are perpetually either waging wars, defending against them, or raiding their neighbors' land. In such hostile environments, mortality rates skyrocket. It's not just the battlefield casualties. It's also famine, disease, and the cold steel of an assassin in the dark. Take the War of the Five Kings, a delightful little scuffle that trimmed not just hedges, but hacked away at some rather important family trees. The result? Fewer family members to carry on the great names. Practical storytelling. Moving from the history books into the realm of narrative, it's a practical storytelling decision by George R.R. Martin. Juggling a cast of characters as large as the population of a small country would be a daunting task for any reader or viewer. It's hard enough keeping track of the Starks, Lannisters, Targaryens, Baratheons, and, oh, don't forget the ever-delightful Greyjoys. By keeping the core family numbers small, Martin ensures that audiences can form attachments to characters without constantly checking a family tree diagram that looks more complex than a map of the Tokyo subway system. Personal tragedy and tough luck. Ever heard, when it rains, it pours? That's the forecast for the great houses. It's a mixture of personal tragedy, untimely passings, often at the hands of others, and good old-fashioned bad luck. Hell hath no fury like a Westerosi scorned, and that fury often snuffs out entire bloodlines. Take the Starks, for example. Without spoiling too much, let's just say their family reunions have fewer attendees with each passing season. Marriage politics. Strategic marriages in Westeros often mean that members of great houses become part of other families, taking on new names and allegiances. Daughters are married off to form alliances, and their offspring carry the names of the new houses. The family tree spreads wide rather than tall, which is also a pretty good strategy to prevent your lineage from getting completely wiped out if, say, winter is coming. The lifestyle living in Portland, I enjoy plenty of green spaces, breweries around every corner, and maybe the occasional overzealous discussion about bike lanes. It's no Westeros, but let me tell you, the most dangerous thing around here is probably deciding to take a hike in some new boots without breaking them in first. In Game of Thrones, the stakes are a smidge higher. The lifestyle of a noble, be it tourneys, hunts, or simply existing in a castle with no OSHA compliance, leads to a lot of early exits. So, there you have it. A mixture of in-world rationale and narrative necessity explains why the great houses such as the Starks and Lannisters might have fewer living members than expected over centuries of existence. I suppose you could think of it as the circle of life, if the circle was less Lion King and more sword fighting on the edge of a volcano.